believe we share equal responsibility for everything that happened. No one forced anyone into this. We were both mutually agreeing.
Same pulled the trigger that killed your son, masturbates his memory.
It was something that was not expected and something that I hope no one ever has to experience again.
Schools are supposed to be a safe space where children and young adults can learn, grow, and prepare for their future as productive members of society. But in recent years, the sanctity and safety of school have been compromised, especially in the United States. Since 2000, around 68 school shootings have occurred in the U.S. In fact, the year 2022 broke the record for the most incidents in over 4 decades. It has been marked as the most violent year for youth between ages 12 to 17. These horrifying incidents have led to protests and pressure from the public demanding stricter laws. The justice system also doesn't take school shooters lightly, and the perpetrators of firearm violence are handed down the maximum possible sentence in most cases. The criminals who terrorize school-going children and teenagers tend to forget that when they get caught, they will have to pay for it. Here are 8 school shooters reacting to life sentences. 1. Nikolas Cruz. Back in February 2018, Nikolas Cruz, who was 19 years old, entered the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and committed the most heinous crime. Nikolas was dropped off at the school by an Uber driver just 20 minutes before dismissal time. According to police reports, he was carrying a backpack and a rifle case. He was recognized by a staff member who radioed a colleague that Nikolas was walking purposefully toward Building 12. He did not pursue the armed student or call a code red in order to lock down the school. He entered the building typically occupied by 900 students and 30 teachers, while carrying an AR-15-style semi-automatic weapon and multiple magazines. Cruz then entered the hallways and indiscriminately assaulted students and teachers. He took the lives of 3 students in the hallway, 6 in the classrooms, and injured 13 others. The students were not able to seek shelter in the hard corners because most of the Building 12 classrooms lacked them. Other potential safe spaces were obstructed by furniture. 2 of the students who died and 5 who were injured were in Ivy Shamus's Holocaust history class. According to the teacher, Cruz wasn't aware that he was present in a class on the Holocaust, despite the fact that he had scrawled swastikas on the ammunition magazines he left at the school. After taking the lives of 2 staff members near a stairwell, Cruz went to the 2nd floor, but no one got hurt there. On the 3rd floor, 5 more students and another staff member lost their lives, and 4 were injured. Finally, Cruz dropped his weapon on the 3rd floor of the building and left the scene by blending in with the fleeing students. A total of 17 people lost their lives in this incident, and 17 were injured. Nikolas was arrested 1 hour later in the nearby Coral Springs. Investigations into the matter revealed that Cruz was a troubled child with a pattern of disciplinary issues and unnerving behavior. He was orphaned just 3 months before the horrifying incident. Since his mother's passing, he had been living with relatives and friends. He was also enrolled in a GED program and worked at a local Dollar Tree. Investigators also found out that between 2008 to 2017, at least 45 calls were made in reference to Cruz, his brother, or the family home. There was also an anonymous tip in February 2017 claiming that Nikolas had threatened to shoot up the school. Another tip in November 2017 said that he might be a violent criminal in the making. At his initial arraignment, 1 day after the incident, he was charged with 17 counts and held without a bond. Cruz also confesses to the crime according to an affidavit by the sheriff's office. He was placed in an isolation cell after the arraignment. In March 2018, Cruz was indicted on a total of 34 charges by a grand jury. Prosecution filed notice of their intent to seek the death penalty. Cruz refused to enter a plea, so his attorney entered not guilty on his behalf. His trial began in October 2021 after a long delay, and he pleaded guilty to all charges against him. Afterwards, Cruz made a statement in which he expressed his regret and asked the victims' families to decide his fate. In November 2022, he was officially sentenced to 34 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing, Nikolas calmly sat and listened. He looked distraught, but maintained his calm. The family members of his victims could be seen in the courtroom where almost everyone was weeping. 2. Devin Erickson. Devin. Michael Erickson is one of the two perpetrators of a gut-wrenching incident that occurred at STEM School Highlands Ranch in Douglas County, Colorado back in May 2019. Erickson, who was 18 years old at the time, along with 16-year-old Alec McKinney, briefly left the school during their lunch period and went to Erickson's house. Here, McKinney threatened Devin into breaking open the weapon safe with a crowbar and an axe. Inside the safe, there were multiple firearms that the duo concealed in a guitar case and a backpack. The two boys also consumed illegal substances before returning to Highlands Ranch. According to Devin, when they departed, McKinney entered the school from the back entrance. He also told the police that he intended to inform a teacher of McKinney's plan. However, when the two united, his plan to stop this was foiled. The two boys then targeted classroom 107 and entered through separate doors. Devin claimed that when he saw Alec reach for one of the weapons, he shouted for the classroom inhabitants to get down, after which he was rushed at by two students, and this impact prompted the weapon to fire. Devin kept insisting that he did not intend for anyone to get harmed. But according to another student, Devin Erickson allegedly pulled out a weapon and yelled, "Nobody move." Kendrick Ray Castillo jumped on him and lost his life in an attempt to save the others. Erickson was then subdued and disarmed by two other students. While this went down in the high school section, Alex McKinney targeted the middle school and injured 4 students before he was tackled by an armed security guard. Castillo lost his life while a total of 8 students were injured in the shooting, of which 2 were in serious condition. According to official reports, the youngest victim was 15 years old. Erickson and McKinney appeared in court and were formally criminally charged for the incident at a hearing in the Douglas County Court. Both suspects were charged with 48 criminal counts, including first-degree after deliberation, arson, and burglary. McKinney was charged as an adult, though his lawyers tried their best to move his case to juvenile court, but their motion was denied by the judge. The judge appointed to oversee both their cases recused herself from the case of McKinney, but stayed on to oversee Erickson's case. In January 2020, Devin pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him. His trial began in May 2021, and his defense team. In June 2021, Erickson was convicted on 46 counts. At the sentencing, District Court Judge Teresa Slade heard testimony of at least 20 STEM school parents, students, and teachers. Parents recounted how their children will have to live with bullets in their bodies. Before the sentence was announced, the judge addressed Erickson and told him that he was manipulative and only showed emotion when his own family spoke. She offered Erickson an opportunity to address the court, which he declined. He was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole plus 38 years. Devin listened to his sentence with his head down, his body shaking as he was overwhelmed by the severity of his sentence. 3. Sky Bush. On a typical Friday morning in April 2018, at the Forest High in Ocala, tragedy unfolded slowly with the arrival of a 19-year-old Sky Bush. The school had more than 2,300 students enrolled at the campus who were arriving for their usual school day. Bush was a former Forest High student who dropped out in 2016. He drove a 2006 Nissan SUV through the gate and entered the parking lot. After parking his vehicle, he retrieved a bag and a guitar and headed undetected to the second floor of the main building and entered a hallway D restroom. Here, he pulled out a tactical vest and gloves from his bag and put them on. He also took out his 1930 sawed-off weapon that he had purchased in a private sale online. He then went towards a classroom right across the restroom and fired at the bottom of the door and injured a junior named Evan. The English teacher, Jennifer Haddon, called 911 and notified the front office. At the time, everyone was confused and had no idea what was happening, but then they smelled gunpowder and called Code Red. Bush then dropped the weapon in the hallways and put his hands in the air. He then told a teacher that he wanted to be arrested and was mentally ill. He also said that he had fired the weapon but didn't mean to hurt anyone. He also didn't know that it would fire. The teacher, McManus Panasuk, called the school office, and immediately Deputy Long arrived and handcuffed Bush. He was arrested and charged with numerous crimes. The state's attorney's office charged him with armed burglary of a structure to facilitate or further terror, possessing a short-barreled weapon, concealed carrying and disrupting or interfering with an educational institution. Bush took a plea agreement negotiated by the state attorney's office and pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison with the first 25 as a minimum mandatory, meaning he will serve them day for day without gaining time. His prison term will also be followed by 30 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution of more than $14,000. He is not allowed to contact any victim, visit any public schools, or own any weapons. His grandmother, Linda Costello, was at the sentencing and said that her grandson is sorry and is a nice person. Bush, in a statement, said, "If I didn't snap now, it would have been later, and it would have been 100 times worse." He also admitted that he wanted to scare people and get locked up in an interview from behind bars. 4. Amy Bishop. Amy Bishop was a professor at the biology department of University of Alabama in Huntsville. She took the life of 3 people back in February 2010. It happened during a routine meeting of the department attended by 12 people. The day of the incident, Bishop taught her anatomy and neurosciences class at the university, and a student later stated that she seemed perfectly normal during the lecture. She then went on to attend the biology department faculty meeting on the 3rd floor Shelby Center for Science and Technology. Witnesses reported that 12 or 13 people were in attendance, and Bishop's behavior prior to the incident was normal. She sat quietly through the meeting for 30 to 40 minutes before pulling out a Ruger P95 9mm weapon. She got up suddenly and began assaulting each person in the room, beginning with the ones closest to her. A survivor later claimed that she wasn't targeting people randomly. This was execution style. According to Deborah Moriarty, a biochemistry professor, Bishop finally pointed at her and pulled the trigger, but only heard a click. Her weapon was either jammed or had run out of ammunition. Bishop was described as appearing perplexed and angry. She was arrested a little while later outside the building. A few minutes after her arrest, she was quoted saying, "It didn't happen. There's no way." Police also questioned her husband, James Anderson, whom she had called for after the incident. After her arrest, there was also concern that she may have booby-trapped the science building with a herpes bomb intended to spread the virus, but police found no such things during their search. The 3 faculty members who lost their lives include Gopi Podila, who was the chairman of the biology department, and 2 associate professors of biology, Maria Ragland Davis and Adriel D. Johnson. It was later revealed that at the age of 21 in 1986, Bishop had taken the life of her 18-year-old brother Seth at their home in Braintree, Massachusetts. And in June 2010, Amy was charged for her brother's death nearly 24 years after the incident. Bishop and her husband were also suspected of sending 2 letter bombs that failed to explode to Paul Rosenberg, a Harvard Medical School professor, back in 1993. After the incident in Huntsville, Amy was charged on 4 counts. Police confiscated her computer, minivan, and large binder containing documents pertaining to her tenure battle. 2 days after being indicted for her brother's death, Bishop attempted to end her life in the Huntsville jail, but she survived. Bishop eventually pleaded guilty when the defense requested the prosecution not seek the death penalty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 5. Caleb Sharp. Caleb Sharp was just 15 years old when he assaulted his fellow students at Freeman High School back in 2017. In the horrific incident, one of his classmates named Sam Strahan lost his life while 3 female students were injured. After years of court delays, Sharp finally pleaded guilty to 1 count of first degree and 3 counts of attempt to take someone's life in January 2022. He apologized to his victims before he was sentenced in August 2022. He said, "I'm sorry to this entire community. I'm sorry to the people who can't sleep at night." He also apologized to the 3 victims he wounded and to Amo Strahan, the mother of Sam Strahan. He said, "Most of all, I'm sorry to Amy and Emily for taking Sam from them. Evil has no place in my heart. I can never do enough penance to pay back what I have taken. I pray for forgiveness." The day before sentencing, Sam's mother and the 3 girls have their statements. All of them said that they wanted Sharp to serve the maximum time in prison, which was 45 years. He had brought several weapons to the school on the morning of September 13th and used them in a hallway. He injured 4 students before surrendering to a custodian. Emma Nees and Gracie Jensen also describe what happened on the day to the court. Jensen addressed Sharp and said, "As I lay there, I watched you walk by me. Lockdown alarm blaring, wearing all black with the most emotionless face I've ever seen. Shooting at my classmates as they ran for their lives into classrooms. I screamed. There was nothing else I could do." Amy Strahan said that she was at work when she was informed about the incident by her colleagues. She said, "You took my son in the worst way possible, and you have zero remorse. You ruined my life." She also called Sharp a sick, evil coward. On the day of the incident, Sharp had brought a duffel back into his school, his containing in 2 weapons. He headed straight to the second-floor hallway and began loading the weapon that got jammed. That's when Strahan approached him. The 20-year-old Sharp showed no emotion as the Spokane County Superior Court Judge Michael Price handed down a 40-year-long prison sentence. He will also have to go before a sentencing review board prior to release after serving his time. 6. Neil Allen McInnes. Neil was responsible for the deadly incident that took place at the satellite campus of New River Community College in the New River Valley Mall. He assaulted 2 women using a firearm at the community college inside the mall area back in April 2013. After the attack, he was subdued by an off-duty security guard and Christiansburg police. He was arrested within minutes, and both the injured women were reported to be in stable condition. Neil's attorney could not be immediately reached, and he was charged with 2 counts each of use of a weapon in the commission of a felony and malicious wounding. McInnes was held at the Montgomery County Jail without bond, and the Christiansburg Police Chief Mark Sisson said that the authorities were trying to establish motive and any connection between the perpetrator and his victims. The incident occurred around noon, and the college was closed afterwards. A student named Josh Brown, who was working on a computer near that classroom when the weapon was fired, said, "I heard 1 shot, and I didn't know what it was. I saw people running out." He also said that he'll be scared to go back to school and that he didn't understand what was wrong with people and why would anyone do something like this. McInnes pleaded guilty to all counts, and his sentencing was scheduled for July 2014 in the Montgomery County Circuit Court. According to police reports, the 2 women were in the lobby when McInnes entered the campus. He was also a student at the school. Investigators revealed that they did not know what motivated him to commit the crime. They looked into his online postings prior to the shooting, but were unable to confirm whether those postings were legitimate or not. Both the injured women were taken to the hospital. He allegedly announced the attack on a forum called 4chan and lived at a walking distance from the site of the incident. According to media outlets, Neil was sentenced in the Montgomery County Circuit Court to a whopping 68 years in prison with 30 years suspended. At the sentencing, the judge said that McInnes's actions were cold and calculated, despite the fact that he was suffering from mental illness. 7. Aaron Ray Ibarra. Ibarra is a mentally challenged man who took the life of 1 student and wounded 2 others at the Seattle Pacific University back in 2014. The incident was inspired by the Columbine High School massacre that took place around 10 years prior to this one. Ibarra, who was 29 at the time, was convicted in November 2017 of premeditated first degree, 3 counts of attempted first degree, and 1 count of second-degree assault after a trial that lasted a month. All the charges carried firearm enhancements and an aggravator because of the way this incident impacted the Seattle Pacific University community. The state had recommended a 112-year-long sentence for Ibarra, but defense requested 90 years in prison. Ibarra was carrying a 12-gauge weapon when he drove into the campus in June 2014. It was the second to last day of classes. He took the life of freshman Paul Lee, who was just 19 years old, on the sidewalk outside the Otto Miller Hall. A second man named Thomas Fowler was also wounded. Ibarra then tried to attack a female student, but she got away in time. After that, Ibarra walked into the Otto Miller Hall and wounded student Sarah Williams, who was 22 at the time. Paul Lee's brother and father were in the courtroom for sentencing, and a video showing photos of Lee as a youth was played before the sentence was announced. Ibarra's guilt wasn't contested as he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Before the sentencing, Ibarra addressed the court saying, "I wish I could take back what I did, but I can't. Over the past 2.5 years, I've realized I damaged more than just innocent people. I damaged the community and even the world." He also said that he hopes to get the help he needs to stop the throbbing in his head. During his trial, the Mount Lake Terrace resident testified that he was following a plan created by God, Satan, and Lucifer. But later on, cross-examination revealed that he was angry with Lee and 3 other students who didn't take him seriously or respected the danger he and his weapon represented. Prosecution acknowledged that Ibarra was mentally ill, but insisted that he was driven by and hatred and anger, and that he understood that what he was doing was wrong. The King County jury deliberated for 1.5 days and returned with a guilty verdict. He was sentenced to 112 years in prison for the crimes he had committed. One juror said, "It's not easy to commit a man to prison for his entire life, especially when he's mentally ill." 8. Jatwan Craig Cuffey. Jatwan Craig Cuffey was a high school student who took the life of a classmate at their school in Butler using a firearm. Cuffey was originally charged for first degree as an adult for the October 2018 incident. The victim was 16-year-old Bobby McKeithen, a fellow student at Butler High School. Later on, a grand jury indicted Cuffey on a charge of second degree. Cuffey had pleaded guilty as a part of the plea agreement. The incident happened during a fight in the crowded hallway of the school. The 17-year-old Cuffey assaulted Bobby over a text exchange between the 2 teenagers, according to authorities. After the incident, Charlotte Mecklenburg School's Superintendent Clayton Wilcox stated that it appeared to have stemmed from a case of bullying that escalated out of control. However, Bobby's family disputed the idea that their son was a bully. Assistant District Attorney Desmond McCallum said that Cuffey did not claim to be a victim of bullying, but he was trying to hurt McKeithen, not take his life. A Matthews police spokesperson stated that surveillance video showed the fight that led to the unfortunate incident. Wilcox said, "We are incredibly saddened that we had a loss of life on one of our campuses, and what makes it doubly worse is it was one of our students who was the perpetrator." Following the guilty plea by Cuffey, a judge sentenced him to a maximum of 9 years in prison for the death of Bobby. Outside the court, Bobby's father told the press that it didn't matter how long Cuffey will spend in prison. He said, "I don't care what kind of sentence you give him. You could have given him the electric chair. My son still ain't coming back to life after that." On the other hand, Cuffey's mother said that she was satisfied with the plea deal he received. About Cuffey, she said, "He was worried about Bobby's family. It took a toll on him as well, but he got through it."